Okay, so this is going to be part one of a coffee table and end table build. It's going to be all white oak. So we're going to take some of this 8/4 pretty rough white oak and we're going to cut it down with the circular saw to start out to get a rough length. This is pretty gnarly wood here, as you can see. It's been sitting in my shop for pretty much the whole summer into the winter now. So it's been sitting for about 6 months. So it's pretty much acclimated. So here what we're going to do, I just like to do is draw out and kind of get my measurements roughly here on a piece of paper. I also use SketchUp for a lot of my stuff, but this I just drew out. It's a pretty basic build. We're going to have a coffee table. It's going to be 40 inches long by 21 inches wide, roughly, and 18 inches high, and that's including the top. So we're also going to have a slight taper in the legs. Um, so we're going to have about a 5 and 3 degree taper from the bottom to the top. So we're going to just, I'll have to take that into account when we lay our joinery later. But right now we're just going to kind of draw it out, get our rough measurements for every piece with the thickness of the legs roughly. Obviously, when you draw something out on paper or in SketchUp, when you start cutting and milling it up, it doesn't always come out the way it should. Since you might find some imperfections in your legs when you're running through the planer. You might have to run them through one more time, two more times, just to get that imperfection out or any chip out, sand and etc. So your length always should be correct, but sometimes your thickness of your width of your boards could be a little different after you mill everything up. As you'll see here, this wood is not straight at any level here, so we're going to run it through the jointer and the table saw, and obviously to the planer. Then we'll cut it to on the miter saw. We're gonna kind of work backwards a little bit here since we already cut the rough length with the circular saw. So we're gonna run this through the jointer a lot. So this is pretty rough. We need to try to get a flat face as much as possible, and at least one straight edge before we take it over to the table saw. Okay, so these are the frame pieces ready to go. Okay, so here we're going to set our tapering jig here. We're just going to run a taper on one side of each leg. So the inside of the long side of the table, you'll see, we'll have a taper, so we'll have a little angle. So we're going to have to account for that when we finally cut our frame pieces, stretchers and aprons to the final length. As you can see here, I'm just laying out these lines. These are going to be a 5-degree angle on the top, and the bottom, and the top will be about a 3-degree angle. So here we're going to, the line's a little heavy, so we're going to cut it a little shorter than that line. So we don't want that much lumber taken off, but I just want to have a good reference of where to set my miter saw at. So we're going to set the first cuts are going to be set at 5 degrees. The top cuts will be set at 3 degrees, and you'll still be able to see the line that we'll sand off later. So here I'm just going to put a little groove in the center of each frame piece here, just to give a little design feature to it. It's just really cosmetic, and the next video you'll see I make a mistake with the end table, so I have to kind of remedy that. So that's all we're doing here. We're just going to put a little groove, the width obviously of the kerf of our miter saw blade, or sorry, table saw blade. Here, so I'm just going to run through. I'm going to run through both sides just in case one side looks better than the other when I start setting these up for joinery. Now you can see we're just going to run a chamfer on each edge of each piece of for the frame, legs, stretchers, and aprons. We're just going to run a chamfer on all 4 sides, just to be on the safe side, make it nice and clean. This is going to be a coffee table, so we don't want any sharp edges, essentially. Okay, so now we're going to start laying out for our joinery. So for joinery, we're going to be using loose mortise tenon joinery. We're going to be using the Festool domino. That's my preferred method of heavier duty table build, especially when they're more fine furniture. This is my attempt at fine furniture building here, so I like to use mortise and tenon joinery. And the Festool is, it's a shortcut to that. So we're going to use that. You still have to be detailed. You still have to have your lines straight. You still have to be precise. You can't just take too many shortcuts. You still have to have everything marked out, laid out, and correct. Even though you're using a domino, it's not a miracle tool, so it definitely speeds up the process, but it's still not foolproof. Okay, so we're just going to glue up and clamp up the side stretchers to the legs only right now, and this is fairly easy. This is the easiest part of the build, I would say. This goes together pretty simple, and there's no angles on this. I don't have to use any clamping calls with 5-degree and 3-degree angles or anything like that. We'll use them later, but this is just straight flat glue up. These are 90-degree angles. No issues here. This is pretty simple. The next day is going to be a little more challenging after we let these glue up overnight. Okay, so the next day we're going to finish our mortises here. I usually do this ahead of time, but I just decided it doesn't want to make a difference here. We'll just put the frame pieces in the vise and we'll just run a mortise that way. It almost makes it easier in a way. So here's the more challenging part is connecting these pieces. For one, they're on angles, 3 and 5 degree angles, and two, they're long. So they're about 20 something inch long stretcher and apron pieces. We have to get into our legs and then put the other piece on top. So it goes together, but I eventually will put it on the floor and then we'll just tap it in. So here you see I use these extra cut off pieces that I cut off earlier with different woods at 3 and 5 degrees. So we're going to use these for our clamp up, make clamping up a lot easier. So we'll use some CA glue and activator just to attach these. And once they're done, the next day we let this dry up overnight and good to go. We just tap them off. So it's nice and easy. Everything glued up and clamped up very nice. Now we're going to start cleaning up the frame. We're going to use a scraper here, and then we're going to use a detail sander, and then we're going to run a 60 grit sander just to get a lot of this glue off. I'm just going to run a chamfer on the feet just to prevent from any tear out. Even though these are going to carpet, it's still, I'm going to be moving around in my shop back and forth. I don't want to tear anything out. So we're going to run a chamfer and then we'll sand it down a little more. So we're going to work our grits here with our sanding. After we run our chamfers, we're going to work up to about 100 grit with orbital sanders. Okay, so now we're going to put a center brace in the bottom and the top of this frame. In the center, we're just going to use pocket holes for this, pocket screws, just to make it easier. You can use your domino and put it together later. Just makes it easier for me. And also, I like to have some kind of screw in the assembly. It just makes me feel a little stronger and just cinches everything up a little better, in my opinion. Okay, so now we're going to go on milling up the top. As you see, my miter saw wasn't big enough to cut through this wood. It's almost about 13 inches. I mean, I probably could, but it's just a little safer just to cut off the end with a little handsaw. So we're just going to mill this all up. We're going to do the tops and the bottoms. We're going to start with the top first. This is going to be a 5/4 white oak. We're going to mill it down to about 1 inch total thickness when we're done, but we're just going to cut it up, plane it up, and then we're going to try to get at least one very straight edge because we don't want any gaps when we laminate these two pieces. So to laminate these two tabletops, we're going to be using biscuits and glue, and I'm just going to use some even clamping pressure. This is just 2 boards, so we don't need to go too crazy with this. We're just going to use, like I said, the biscuit joiner, and then we're going to use some glue and some parallel cabinet clamps and some pipe clamps. While the biscuit joiner out, I'm just going to run some slots for the tabletop fasteners we're going to do in our part 2. We're going to be using Z-clips to mount the top. And here we're going to put some bottom cleats in just to hold the slats that we're going to put in later in this video. So we're just going to use some brad nails, and then we're going to put a couple of trim head screws in after we countersink. This is another thing I try to do when I laminate boards. I try to put the grain patterns. I try to do it the frown and smiley face, just the grain going upwards one side and going downwards the other side. So if they do try to warp or move, they'll kind of even each other out. So here we're just going to fill some of these knot holes in with some Total Boat epoxy and with some hardener. I'm just going to use a little bit here, put some black dye in, and we're just going to fill these in and let these sit overnight. Okay, so rather than just notching out wood to go around the legs here, because there's a gap here with the indent, I'm just going to put a little piece of, almost like a piece of trim in the inside, just to fill that gap in and makes it look a little cleaner. It's going to be white oak, and it's going to match up with the bottom stretcher and aprons. Okay, so here we're just going to use our spacers here to even out our slats, and then we're going to trim up the tabletop and clean this up to the final length here. We're going to use the track saw. You can also use a circular saw with a straight edge, which I've done that for years. That method works fine also. It just makes it a little quicker. So we're going to clean this up. We're going to run the belt sander about 60 to 80 grit, and then we're going to run an aggressive orbital sander about 80 grit, and then we're going to run a chamfer on each side of the tabletop, bottom and top. We're going to run about a 30-degree angle here, just to give it a nice clean look and also soften the edges a little bit. And then we're going to run about 120 grit to about 150 grit with the finish sander here, just to get it all cleaned up finally. This will be stained. We're going to be staining this, and I don't typically like staining hardwoods, but white oak is not a bad option if you're going to stain with a white stain, which we're going to do. It just helps it from keep turning yellow or red, like a red oak look, after you put any kind of finish or anything on it. So this will hopefully keep the white oak look. So that's about it. Stay tuned for part 2, where we're going to mount this, stain it, and then build our end table. Thanks for watching.